The Whitmore legacy begins with a Southern heiress forced into a loveless engagement. But one forbidden moment in the stables ignites a quiet rebellion. What secret could change the fate of a family rooted in control? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The afternoon sun beat down on the Whitmore estate, making the white columns of the main house gleam like ivory. Rows of pristine grapevines stretched as far as the eye could see, a testament to 4 generations of Whitmore success in Georgia. Sadie Whitmore stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, dressed in a pale blue dress that her father had selected for tonight's dinner party. At 33, she still lived under his roof and his rules. The weight of family expectations pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy coat she couldn't take off. "Miss Whitmore?" A soft knock came at the door. "Your father wants to know if you're ready. The Carltons will be arriving in 30 minutes. Sadie sighed, smoothing down the fabric of her dress. "Tell him I'll be right down, Martha." The Carlton family. Again. This would be the 3rd dinner this month with State Senator James Carlton and his son Richard. At 40, Richard Carlton was ambitious, handsome in a cold way, and completely devoid of humor or warmth. He was also, as her father had not so subtly implied, her future husband. Downstairs, Benedict Whitmore paced the marble floor of the entrance. At 65, he still stood tall and imposing, his silver hair perfectly combed, his suit tailored to hide the slight softening of his once athletic frame. "There you are," he said, as Sadie descended the stairs. His eyes scanned her appearance with a critical gaze. "Good, you look appropriate, not beautiful. Not lovely, appropriate." It was the highest compliment Benedict Whitmore ever paid his daughter. "Father," Sadie began carefully, "I was hoping we might discuss the arrangement you've been suggesting." Benedict's expression hardened. There's nothing to discuss. The merger of our families is beneficial to both. The Carltons have political power, we have land and history. Richard will be governor one day, mark my words. And what about what I want?" The words slipped out before Sadie could stop them. Her father's eyes flashed with anger. "What you want?" He moved closer, lowering his voice. "What about what for? Generations of Whitmores have built? What about your duty? Your mother abandoned hers. I won't have you doing the same." The mention of her mother, who had walked away from the family 20 years ago, silenced Sadie. It was Benedict's most effective weapon, a reminder of what happened to women who defied the Whitmore legacy. The sound of tires on gravel saved her from having to respond. Through the window, she saw the black town car carrying the Carltons pull up to the front steps. "Smile," Benedict commanded, "and remember who you are." Noah Grayson wiped the sweat from his brow as he finished brushing down the last horse of the day. The stable was his domain, the one place on the Whitmore estate where he felt at peace. At 36, he had spent half his life working this land, first alongside his father and then, after the older man's death, on his own. The horses knew him, trusted him. People were more complicated. He kept his distance from the main house and its residents, speaking only when spoken to, always respectful, always invisible. It was safer that way. Through the open stable door, he could see the lights of the main house blazing, another fancy dinner party, another reminder of the divide between his world and theirs. As he put away the brushes, a sound made him pause, a soft, muffled sob coming from the hayloft. Noah frowned. No one should be in the stables at this hour, especially with important guests at the house. Cautiously, he climbed the wooden ladder to the loft. In the dim light, he could make out a figure huddled against the hay bales. The pale blue dress she wore seemed out of place among the rough straw and dust. "Miss Whitmore?" he said softly, recognizing her. Sadie's head jerked up, her eyes wide. With alarm, tear tracks stained her cheeks, and her carefully styled hair had come loose around her face. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking, "don't tell anyone you saw me." Noah hesitated, one hand still on the ladder. He had seen Sadie Whitmore many times over the years, had nodded respectfully when she passed, had even saddled her horse on the rare occasions she was allowed to ride. But he had never seen her like this, vulnerable, broken, human. "Are you hurt?" he asked, concern overriding his usual caution. She shook her head, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. "No, not physically." Noah stood uncertainly, not knowing whether to leave or stay. The wise thing would be to go, to pretend he had never seen the boss's daughter crying in his hayloft. But something in her eyes, a loneliness he recognized too well, kept him rooted to the spot. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "the horses help. When things are difficult." Sadie looked up at him, really seeing him perhaps for the first time. "Which one?" "Athena," he replied. "The grey mare. She's gentle." A ghost of a smile touched Sadie's lips. "I used to ride her, years ago." Noah nodded. "She remembers you." For a moment, they were silent, the sound of distant laughter from the house floating through the night air, a reminder of the world waiting for Sadie. "I should get back," she said, though she made no move to leave. "They'll be looking for me." "The back door by the kitchen garden," Noah offered. "The staff use it. No one will see you come in that way." Surprise flickered across her face, followed by gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Grayson," he supplied. "Noah Grayson. Thank you, Mr. Grayson." She stood, brushing hay from her expensive dress. As she reached the ladder, she paused, looking back at him. Would you tell Athena hello from me when you see her tomorrow?" The request was so unexpected, so childlike in its simplicity, that Noah felt something shift inside him. "Yes, Miss Whitmore, I will." The dinner was excruciating. Richard Carlton spent the entire meal talking about his political ambitions, while his father and Benedict discussed campaign strategies as if the election were already won. Sadie pushed food around her plate, her mind drifting back to the quiet stables and the unexpected kindness of the farmhand. "Sadie will make an excellent political wife," Benedict was saying. "She was raised to uphold the highest standards." Richard smiled thinly. "I have no doubt. Beauty and breeding, a rare combination." Her skin crawled at his appraising look, but she forced herself to smile. 20 years of etiquette lessons had taught her how to hide her true feelings beneath a veneer of politeness. Later, as Richard took her hand in the hallway away from their fathers, she fought the urge to pull away. "We should set a date," he said, his grip tightening. "I'm thinking a spring wedding, maximum press coverage." "Isn't that a bit premature?" Sadie managed to say. "We hardly know each other." Richard chuckled, the sound devoid of warmth. "We know enough. I know you're a Whitmore with all that entails. You know I'll be governor, maybe more. What else matters?" Everything, she wanted to scream. Everything else matters. But she said nothing, just extracted her hand from his and excused herself to check on dessert. In the kitchen, away from prying eyes, she leaned against the counter and took deep breaths. This was her life now. The path laid out for her, just like her older sister Caroline, who had married a business associate of their father's and now lived 3 states away, rarely calling, rarely smiling in the few photos Sadie saw of her. "Are you all right, Miss Sadie?" Martha asked, concern in the old housekeeper's eyes. "Just tired," she lied. "Is dessert ready?" "Yes, miss, and Miss Emma is asking for you. She's been awake with that cough again." Emma, her 12-year-old sister, the unexpected late-in-life child who had cost their mother her last bit of will to stay. The only person on the estate who made Sadie smile without effort. "Tell father I'm checking on Emma, and will be down shortly." Upstairs, in the room decorated with horses and ballet dancers, Emma sat up in bed, her blonde hair in 2 long braids. She looked so much like their mother that sometimes it hurt to look at her. "You escaped the boring dinner," Emma said, grinning. "Lucky." Sadie sat on the edge of the bed. "Not lucky, just sneaky." "How's the cough?" Emma shrugged. "Stupid. Dr. Williams says I can't ride for another week." "Well, Dr. Williams knows best," Sadie said, though she secretly thought their father's insistence on the family doctor was outdated. Emma needed a specialist for her recurring respiratory issues. "Did Prince Charming propose yet?" Emma asked, making a gagging face. Despite herself, Sadie laughed. "Richard Carlton is hardly Prince Charming." "Then why is father making you marry him?" The directness of children. "It's complicated, Em. Emma reached for her hand. Is it because of Mom? Because she left? Sadie's heart squeezed. Partly. Father believes in family alliances. Like in Game of Thrones? Emma's eyes widened. Are we the Lannisters? You are too young to be watching that, Sadie scolded, but squeezed her sister's hand. And no, we're not the Lannisters. We're just the Whitmores. Emma looked thoughtful. If I were older, I'd tell Father he couldn't make you marry anyone. I'd tell him you should marry someone you love. Love. Such a simple word. Such an impossible concept in the Whitmore household. I better get back downstairs, Sadie said, kissing Emma's forehead. Try to sleep. Will you come riding with me when I'm better? Emma asked. Like we used to? Of course, Sadie promised, though she wondered if Benedict would allow it. He had been increasingly controlling of her time as the courtship with Richard progressed. Downstairs, the evening dragged on for 2 more hours. By the time the Carltons left, with Richard placing a cold kiss on her cheek and whispering soon in her ear, Sadie felt hollowed out. Benedict retired to his study with a glass of bourbon, his standard evening ritual. The house grew quiet, and Sadie, instead of going to her room, found herself drawn outside back toward the stables. She told herself she just needed air, just needed to escape the lingering smell of Richard's cologne. But as she approached the stable doors, she knew she was looking for something else, someone else. Noah was still there, reading by the light of a small lamp. He looked up, startled, when she appeared in the doorway. Miss Whitmore, I came to see Athena, she said, the excuse sounding flimsy even to her own ears. You said she remembers me. Noah hesitated, then set down his book. She's probably asleep, but I won't wake her, Sadie promised. I just wanted to be here, if that's all right. Understanding dawned in his eyes. The dinner didn't go well? The dinner went exactly as planned, she said bitterly. That's the problem. Noah stood, clearly uncomfortable with her candor, but unwilling to send her away. I was about to make some tea. There's a kettle in the tack room. Would you like some? The offer touched her. How long had it been since someone had offered her something without expecting anything in return? Yes, she said, I would. Thank you. As she followed him to the small room at the back of the stables, Sadie realized this was the first choice she had made for herself in longer than she could remember. A small rebellion, a tiny taste of freedom. And as Noah handed her a chipped mug of tea, their fingers brushing momentarily, she felt something stir inside her that she had long thought dead. Hope. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows of the garden path. Benedict Whitmore's eyes narrowed as he observed his daughter sitting with the stable hand, her face more animated than he had seen it in years. This, he decided, would not do. Not at all. Morning light filtered through the curtains of Sadie's bedroom. She'd hardly slept, her mind replaying the hours spent in the stables with Noah. They had talked until well past midnight, simple conversation about horses, books, and the changing seasons. Nothing inappropriate, nothing scandalous. And yet, it had felt more intimate than anything she'd experienced in years. The knock on her door came earlier than usual. Miss Whitmore? Martha's voice sounded strained. Your father wants to see you in his study immediately. Sadie's stomach tightened. She knew that tone. It meant trouble. Benedict Whitmore was standing by the window when she entered his study. Hands clasped behind his back, he didn't turn around. Sit down, Sadie. She perched on the edge of a leather chair, hands folded in her lap like the proper southern lady she'd been raised to be. The air in the room felt thick with tension. Mr. Grayson has been with us for many years, Benedict began, his voice deceptively casual. His father worked this land before him. Loyal men, hard workers. Sadie felt a chill run through her. So he knew. I didn't realize you were acquainted with our stable manager, Benedict continued, finally turning to face her. I'm not really, Sadie said carefully. I just wanted to check on Athena last night for Emma's sake. At midnight? Benedict's eyebrows rose. With tea. There was no point in lying. I needed some air after dinner. Mr. Grayson was kind enough to offer me tea. We talked about the horses. Benedict walked to his desk, picking up a small silver frame. a photo of Sadie's mother from before she left. Your mother also enjoyed talking with the help. The implication stung like a slap. It was just tea, Father. It was inappropriate, he snapped, setting the frame down with a thud. You are a Whitmore. More importantly, you are practically engaged to Richard Carlton. What do you think he would say if he knew you were consorting with a stable hand? Consorting? Sadie stood up, anger flaring. We had a conversation, that's all. That's how it begins. Benedict's voice turned cold. And we both know how it ends. Look at your mother, throwing away everything for some fantasy of love with a nobody, leaving her children behind. Is that what you want? The mention of her mother was a low blow, and Benedict knew it. Sadie's anger deflated, replaced by the familiar weight of guilt and obligation. Richard will be here this afternoon, Benedict continued. He's bringing the ring. His father and I have already discussed the announcement party next weekend. So, soon? Sadie whispered, the reality of her situation crashing down around her. It's been decided. Benedict's tone left no room for argument. And Sadie, I've instructed Martha to accompany you should you feel the need for some fresh air in the future. Translation. She was being watched, monitored like a child. May I go now? She asked, her voice wooden. Benedict nodded. Wear the green dress. Richard likes when he comes. And do something with your hair. Noah knew something was wrong the moment he saw Martha leading Sadie toward the stables later that morning. The housekeeper's presence was unusual, and Sadie's stiff posture told him everything he needed to know. Miss Whitmore wanted to see. It's about a horse for her sister, Martha explained, her expression apologetic. She had always been kind to Noah, slipping him extra food when he worked late. Of course, Noah replied, not looking directly at Sadie. Which one were you thinking of, Miss Whitmore? Sadie's eyes met his briefly, filled with apology and frustration. The Palomino, I think. Emma likes the golden ones. They talked about horses while Martha hovered nearby, the conversation painfully formal compared to the easy flow of the night before. When they finished, Sadie handed him a slip of paper with Emma's riding schedule. Please have the horse ready on these days, Mr. Grayson, once she's well enough to ride again. Their fingers brushed as he took the paper, and he felt something. Tucked inside the fold, a small note. He kept his face neutral as he pocketed it. Yes, Miss Whitmore, I'll make sure everything is prepared for Miss Emma. Only after they left did he read the hastily scrawled message. I'm sorry, Father knows. Be careful. Noah crumpled the note in his fist. He should have known better, should have remembered his place. The Whitmores weren't people you got close to. They were the owners, the bosses, untouchable as stars. And yet the memory of Sadie's smile as they'd talked about his grandmother's fig jam recipe, the way her eyes had lit up when he described the old truck he was fixing up, it had felt real. Like two people connecting, not a lady and her servant. Foolish, he muttered to himself, just plain foolish. Richard Carlton arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, driving his sleek black Mercedes himself rather than using a driver. He was handsome, in the conventional way, tall, well-dressed, with the confident air of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. You look lovely, he told Sadie, as he handed her a small bouquet of roses. Perfectly selected, perfectly arranged, perfectly impersonal. Thank you, she replied automatically, accepting the flowers with a practiced smile. They sat in the formal living room, making small talk about the weather, about his latest speech, about a charity gala in Atlanta. Benedict hovered nearby, smoothly, guiding the conversation whenever it lagged. Finally, Richard reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I think it's time we made this official, don't you? He said, opening the box to reveal a massive diamond ring. The stone was ostentatious, more a statement of wealth than of love. Sadie stared at it, a roaring sound filling her ears. This was it, the moment her cage door would permanently close. It's beautiful, she managed to say. The papers will love it, Richard replied, sliding the ring onto her finger. It felt heavy, alien. We'll announce it at the benefit next weekend. Maximum visibility. Benedict beamed, the proud patriarch securing his dynasty. I'll have Martha bring champagne. As they celebrated her engagement, Sadie felt herself floating outside her body, watching the scene from a distance. This woman with the frozen smile and the too big ring couldn't possibly be her. This couldn't possibly be her life. And yet, it was. 3 days passed. 3 days of engagement congratulations, of Richard's increased presence at the estate, of wedding talk and future plans. 3 days of being shadowed by Martha or one of the other staff members whenever she left the house. 3 days of not seeing Noah. Emma's health improved, and she was finally cleared to resume riding. The excitement on her little sister's face was the only bright spot in Sadie's increasingly grey world. "Can you come with me?" Emma begged, bouncing on Sadie's bed. "Please, I haven't been on a horse in forever." Sadie hesitated. Going to the stables meant potentially seeing Noah, which both thrilled and terrified her. "I'm not sure Father would approve." "Who cares what Father thinks?" Emma said with the careless bravery of youth. "Besides, Martha can come with us. That's the rule now, right?" "Emma," Sadie scolded, though she couldn't help smiling at her sister's rebellious spirit. "Don't talk like that." "Like what? Like someone with a backbone?" Emma flopped dramatically across the bed. "Please come. It won't be any fun without you." How could she say no to that face? "All right, but just for a little while." The stables smelled of hay and leather, familiar and comforting. Sadie felt some of the tension leave her shoulders as they entered, Martha trailing behind them. Noah was adjusting the saddle on the Palomino horse he'd prepared for Emma. He glanced up as they entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Good morning, Miss Emma, Miss Whitmore." He nodded to Martha. "Mrs. Johnson." "Is butterscotch ready?" Emma asked eagerly, approaching the Palomino. "All set," Noah replied with a small smile. "I've got her warmed up and ready to go." "What about Athena?" Emma turned to Sadie. "You should ride her. Noah says she's been missing you." Sadie's eyes flew to Noah's, surprised. He'd been talking about her to Emma? I didn't bring my riding clothes," Sadie hedged. "So, wear pants like a normal person," Emma said, rolling her eyes. "I've got extra boots you can borrow." Martha cleared her throat. "Miss Whitmore, your father might not. It's just around the base." "Paddock," Sadie interrupted, a spark of defiance flaring within her. "Father can hardly object to that." 20 minutes later, dressed in borrowed riding clothes that were slightly too small, Sadie sat atop Athena as the grey mare trotted sedately around the paddock. Emma raced ahead on butterscotch, her laughter floating back on the breeze. "She's a natural," Noah said, walking alongside Sadie's horse. With Martha sitting on a bench some distance away, they could speak somewhat freely, though they kept their voices low. "She gets that from our mother," Sadie replied. "She used to ride bareback, through the orchards, before she left," Noah finished quietly. Sadie nodded, surprised at his directness. "How did you know?" "My father told me. He worked here when it happened." They were silent for a moment, the rhythmic sound of hoofbeats filling the space between them. "I'm engaged," Sadie said finally, though she wore no ring. Richard had insisted she save the reveal for the announcement party. "I heard," Noah replied, his voice carefully even. "Congratulations." The word hung between them, hollow and false. "It's what's expected," Sadie said, more to herself than to him. "The Whitmore legacy." Noah looked up at her, his eyes more intense than she'd ever seen them. "Is that enough for you, living up to expectations?" The question hit her like a physical blow. No one had ever asked her that before. What was enough for her? What she wanted? "It has to be," she whispered. Before Noah could respond, Emma came, galloping back, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "This is the best day ever. Can we go beyond the paddock, please, Sadie? Just to the lake and back?" Sadie hesitated, looking at Martha, who was now standing and frowning in their direction. "I'll accompany you," Noah offered, "to ensure your safety." "See, Noah will protect us," Emma said triumphantly. Against her better judgment, Sadie nodded. "A short ride, to the lake and directly back." As they set off, Martha calling after them that they shouldn't be gone long, Sadie felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. The wind in her hair, the powerful animal beneath her, the open sky above. For a few precious minutes she could pretend she was someone else. Someone without obligations, without a predetermined future. At the small lake that marked the boundary of the Whitmore property, they stopped to let the horses drink. Emma wandered off to collect wildflowers, still within sight, but out of earshot. "She reminds me of you," Noah said, watching Emma. Sadie raised an eyebrow. "You didn't know me at that age." "Not directly," he admitted, "but I saw you sometimes riding through the orchards like your mother, laughing, before they taught you to be a proper lady." The observation startled her. "You remember that?" Noah's gaze was steady. "I remember a lot of things about you, Sadie Whitmore. It was the first time he'd used her first name, and it sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the Georgia sun." "I should be getting back," she said, suddenly flustered. "Richard is coming for dinner." Noah's expression shuttered at the mention of her fiancé. "Of course." As they rode back toward the stables, Emma chattering happily about her adventure, Sadie felt the weight of reality settling back onto her shoulders. The brief taste of freedom made her impending marriage feel all the more suffocating. In the stables, as Noah helped her dismount, his hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. The contact, though brief, sent a jolt through her, that she felt all the way to her toes. "Thank you," she said formally, aware of Martha watching them, "for ensuring our safety." Noah stepped back, resuming his role as the respectful employee. "Any time, Miss Whitmore." As they walked back to the house, Emma skipping ahead, Martha leaned close to Sadie. "Be careful, child," the older woman murmured. "Your father sees everything." Sadie straightened her shoulders. "We did nothing wrong, Martha." The housekeeper's eyes were kind but worried. "It's not about right or wrong, it's about what's allowed. You know that better than anyone." And Sadie did know. The rules of her world were clear. Whitmore's married for advantage, not love. Whitmore's maintained appearances at all costs. Whitmore's did not fall for farmhands. But as she glanced back at the stables one last time, seeing Noah's tall figure framed in the doorway, she wondered for the first time if those rules were worth following. Richard was particularly attentive at dinner that night, discussing wedding details as if they were campaign strategies. Spring was best, he insisted. Maximum media coverage. Good weather for outdoor photos, perfect timing before the gubernatorial race began in earnest. "I've already spoken with Vogue about a spread," he told Sadie. "The wealthy Southern heiress and the rising political star. They love the narrative." Narrative? As if their life together was just a story being written for public consumption. "What about the honeymoon?" Benedict asked, pouring more wine. "I suggest Europe. Paris, perhaps." Richard shook his head. "No, time. The campaign needs to be the focus, maybe a weekend in New York. The right people will see us there." Sadie pushed her food around her plate, her appetite gone. Was this really to be her life? Photo spreads and strategic appearances, a marriage of convenience played out in the public eye? "Sadie?" Richard's voice cut through her thoughts. "You're unusually quiet tonight," she forced a smile. "Just taking it all in. It's happening so fast." "That's politics, darling," Richard replied, patting her hand. "You'll get used to it." But would she? Could anyone get used to living a lie? Later, as Richard was leaving, he pulled her into an embrace in the foyer. His kiss was possessive, calculated, his hands firmly on her waist. "You know," he murmured against her ear, "you really should be more enthusiastic about all this. Many women would kill to be in your position." Sadie pulled back slightly. "I'm just a private person, Richard. The publicity aspect is difficult for me." His eyes hardened for a moment before his politician's smile returned. "You'll adapt. The governor's wife needs to be visible, supporting. Perfect." After he left, Sadie stood in the foyer, feeling trapped in a way she never had before. The walls of the house she'd grown up in suddenly seemed to be closing in on her. Without conscious thought, she found herself walking toward the back door, toward the stables. She needed air, needed space to think. Halfway there, she stopped, remembering her father's warning, the engagement, the expectations, the rules. Instead, she changed direction and headed to Emma's room. Her sister was already in bed, reading by lamplight. "Sadie!" Emma's face lit up. "Did you have a boring dinner?" "The most boring," Sadie confirmed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "What are you reading?" Emma showed her the book, an adventure story about a girl who disguises herself as a boy to sail around the world. The librarian at school gave it to me. Dad would hate it. Sadie smiled. Then we won't tell him, Will. We. Emma studied her sister's face. Despite her youth, she was perceptive beyond her years. You don't want to marry Richard, do you? The directness of the question caught Sadie off guard. It's complicated, Em. No, it's not, Emma insisted. You don't love him. That's simple. Love isn't always the most important thing, Sadie said. Repeating the lesson that had been drilled into her since childhood, Emma made a face. That's stupid, of course it is. Emma. Well, it is, her sister insisted. And you know who you do like? Noah. I saw how you looked at him today. Heat rushed to Sadie's cheeks. Don't be ridiculous. Mr. Grayson works for father, that's all. Emma was undeterred. He likes you too. He asked me about you. What books you like. If you still paint, things like that. Sadie's heart fluttered. He did. See? You're smiling, Emma said triumphantly. You never smile like that when Richard is around, out of the mouths of babes. Sadie sighed, tucking a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. It doesn't matter what I feel, Em. The engagement party is this weekend. The plans are made. So unmake them, Emma said simply. Mom did. The comparison to their mother stung, but it also sparked something in Sadie, a question she'd never fully allowed herself to ask. Had her mother been brave rather than selfish? Had she chosen freedom over a life half-lived? It's late, Sadie said, kissing Emma's forehead. You should sleep. After turning out the light and closing Emma's door, Sadie leaned against the wall, her sister's words echoing in her mind. So unmake them. As if it were that simple. As if she could just walk. Away from everything, the legacy, the expectations, the security. But where would she go? What would she do? And what about Emma? Sadie couldn't bear the thought of leaving her sister behind, of being absent from her life as their mother had been. No, running wasn't the answer. But neither was marrying Richard. As she walked back to her own room, Sadie felt torn between duty and desire in a way she never had before. And all because of a few conversations with a farmhand who saw her, really saw her, when no one else did. What was she going to do? The day of the engagement party arrived with perfect Georgia weather, sunny skies, a gentle breeze, and the scent of magnolias in the air. The Whitmore estate had been transformed overnight. White tents dotted the expansive lawn. Catering staff bustled about, setting up tables with fine china and crystal, and florists arranged elaborate centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath. Sadie stood at her bedroom window, watching the preparations with a growing sense of dread. In less than 6 hours, her engagement to Richard Carlton would be officially announced to over 200 of Georgia's most influential people. There would be no turning back after that. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called, expecting Martha with her breakfast tray. Instead, a delivery man entered carrying a large white box tied with a silver ribbon. Special delivery for Miss Whitmore, he announced, setting the box on her bed. After he left, Sadie approached the box warily. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, lay a stunning designer gown in pale blue silk, her engagement party dress, no doubt. High card tucked into the folds read, "For the future Mrs. Carlton, wear this tonight, the press will be watching." Richard, not even a pretense of romance, just another campaign directive. With a sigh, Sadie closed the box without taking out the dress. She couldn't bear to look at it just yet. Downstairs, the house was in chaos. Event planners shouted instructions, florists argued about arrangement heights, and in the middle of it all stood Benedict Whitmore, micromanaging every detail. The Carlton table must be closest to ours, he was instructing the head planner as Sadie passed. And make sure the governor is seated near Senator James. We want that photo opportunity. Politics and appearances, the story of her life. Emma bounced into the foyer, still in her pajamas despite the late morning hour. Sadie, did you see your dress? It looks like something a fairy princess would wear. I saw it, Sadie confirmed, managing a small smile for her sister's benefit. Emma lowered her voice, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. I have something to show you. In my room. It's important. Curious, Sadie followed Emma upstairs. Once the door was closed, Emma pulled a small package from under her bed. Noah asked me to give this to you, she whispered, her eyes bright with the thrill of conspiracy. He said it's a gift for you, a secret gift. Sadie's heart skipped a beat as she took the package, a small box wrapped in simple brown paper. When did he give you this? This morning. I snuck out to the stables before breakfast. Emma grinned. I'm an excellent secret keeper. Emma, you shouldn't... Just open it, her sister interrupted impatiently. With trembling fingers, Sadie unwrapped the package. Inside was a small jar of amber-colored jam and a folded note. She opened the note first. My grandmother's fig jam recipe. You said you'd never tasted anything like it. There's more where this came from, if you ever want to visit the old cabin where she used to make it. Take care, Sadie. And the simple gift touched her more deeply than all of Richard's expensive presents combined. Noah had remembered their conversation that first night in the stables, remembered how she'd mentioned loving fig jam as a child. Why are you crying? Emma asked, alarmed. Isn't jam a good present? Sadie wiped her eyes, smiling despite herself. It's a perfect present, Em. The best kind. Better than Richard's fancy dress? Much better, Sadie admitted, tucking the note into her pocket and placing the jam jar carefully in her nightstand drawer. But it has to be our secret, okay? Father wouldn't understand. Emma nodded solemnly. Because Noah isn't rich or a politician? Something like that, Sadie replied, smoothing Emma's tangled hair. Now, you should get dressed. Martha will have... If she finds you still in pajamas this late. As Emma scampered off to change, Sadie sat on the edge of the bed, Noah's note burning a hole in her pocket. The old cabin he'd mentioned, was that an invitation, a suggestion, or just a bit of nostalgia? Whatever it was, it felt dangerous, tempting, real. The engagement party was in full swing by 8 o'clock. Lanterns glowed in the gathering twilight, casting a romantic light over the elegantly dressed crowd. A string quartet played soft classical music, and waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Sadie stood beside Richard, the massive diamond on her finger catching the light with every movement. She wore the blue silk gown he'd sent, her hair swept up in an elaborate style that had taken Martha over an hour to perfect. She looked, by all accounts, like the perfect political wife-to-be. Smile, Richard murmured through his teeth as another photographer approached. This one's for Southern living. Sadie obediently curved her lips upward, leaning slightly into Richard's possessive embrace. Flash. Another moment captured for posterity, another piece of the facade. You're doing wonderfully, Benedict said, joining them after the photographer moved on. The governor just told me you make a striking couple. The dress was a good choice, Richard agreed, his eyes scanning the crowd rather than looking at his fiancée. Perfect for the demographic we need to impress. As they talked politics and photo ops, Sadie's gaze drifted toward the stables in the distance. The lights were on, a warm glow in the darkness. Was Noah there? Had he heard the music, the laughter, the announcement of her engagement? Sadie, Richard's sharp voice brought her attention back. Senator Wilson asked you a question. I'm so sorry, she said, flushing. Would you mind repeating it? The older man smiled indulgently. I was just asking if you're excited about the campaign trail. It's grueling work for a political spouse. I'm looking forward to supporting Richard, she replied carefully, the rehearsed answer slipping out automatically. She'll be an asset, Richard said, his hand tightening on her waist. The perfect combination of beauty and breeding. As if she were a prize-winning mare rather than a person, Sadie fought the urge to pull away from his touch. Excuse me, she said as soon as there was a break in the conversation. I should check on my sister. Before Richard could object, she slipped through the crowd, nodding and smiling at guests as she passed. But instead of heading toward the house where Emma was supposed to be having dinner with her governess, Sadie veered toward a small gazebo at the edge of the property. She needed space, needed air, needed one moment away from the suffocating weight of expectations. The gazebo was empty, lit only by the distant glow of the party lanterns. Sadie sank onto a bench, taking deep breaths of the cool night air. From here, she could see it all. The sprawling Whitmore estate, the party in full swing, the future laid out before her like a gilded cage. "You look beautiful," a voice said, softly from the shadows. Sadie jumped, her heart racing. Noah. He stepped into the dim light, dressed more formally than she'd ever seen him. A clean button-down shirt, pressed slacks. Still far from the tuxedos and designer suits of the party guests, but a clear attempt to look his best. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I shouldn't be here. I wanted to see you. Before I'm officially off the market?" Sadie suggested, a bitter edge to her voice. Noah winced. "That's not what I meant." "I know." She sighed, making room for him on the bench. "Thank you for the jam, it was thoughtful." "Did you like the note?" he asked, sitting beside her but careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Yes," she admitted, "though I'm not sure what it meant." Noah looked down at his hands. "It meant that there are other options, other paths if you wanted them." The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken but unmistakable. He was offering her an escape route, a way out. "I can't just leave," Sadie whispered, though part of her desperately wanted to. "There's Emma, and the family name, and responsibilities." Noah finished for her. "I understand that better than you might think, do you?" she asked, turning to face him fully. He nodded, his eyes serious in the dim light. "My father worked this land for 40 years. When he died, I promised him I'd take care of my grandmother, keep her in the house he built for her. It's why I've stayed even when the pay was better elsewhere." "Where is she now, your grandmother?" A shadow passed over Noah's face. "She passed last year. The cabin is empty now, except for her things and her memory." "The cabin you mentioned in your note," Sadie realized. "Yes." He hesitated, then added, "It's not much, nothing like what you're used to, but it's peaceful there, quiet." The thought of such a place, a simple cabin far from photographers and political strategies and family legacies, was almost painfully appealing. "I should get back," Sadie said, reluctantly, hearing her name being called in the distance. "They'll be looking for me." Noah stood, offering his hand to help her up. When their fingers touched, that same electric current ran between them, stronger than before. "Whatever you decide," Noah said quietly, "know that you deserve more than being someone's political asset. You deserve to be loved for who you are, Sadie Whitmore, not for your name or your family connections." Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing into the shadows as Richard's voice grew closer, calling her name with increasing impatience. Sadie took a deep breath, smoothed her expensive dress, and walked back toward the party. And toward Richard. Toward her fate. But Noah's words echoed in her mind with every step. "Where have you been?" Richard hissed when she rejoined him. "The toast is about to start." "I needed some air," Sadie replied, pasting on her society smile as cameras flashed around them. Richard gave her a warning look. "Next time tell me first. It looks bad when I don't know where my fiancé is." The band stopped playing and Benedict stepped onto the small stage that had been set up on the lawn. He tapped a knife against his champagne glass, the clear ring, silencing the crowd. "Friends, colleagues, esteemed guests," he began, his voice carrying across the garden. "Tonight is a celebration of not just an engagement, but a union of two great Georgia families, the Whitmores and the Carltons." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "As many of you know, my daughter Sadie is the embodiment of Southern grace and tradition, and Richard Carlton represents the future of leadership in our great state. Together, they will carry on the legacies of both families with honor and distinction." More applause. Sadie felt Richard's arms snake around her waist, pulling her closer for the benefit of the watching crowd. "I'd like to propose a toast," Benedict continued, raising his glass, "to Sadie and Richard. May their union bring strength to both families and to the great state of Georgia." "To Sadie and Richard." The crowd echoed, glasses raised. As the applause died down, Richard took Sadie's hand and led her onto the stage. This too had been rehearsed, their first public appearance as an officially engaged couple. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate with us tonight," Richard began, his politician's voice smooth and practiced. "As the future governor of this state, He paused for the appreciative laughter and applause. I know the value of strong partnerships, and there is no stronger partnership than marriage. He turned to Sadie, taking both her hands in his. To the crowd, it must have looked loving, intimate. Only Sadie felt the possessive pressure of his grip. Sadie Whitmore has agreed to stand beside me as I lead Georgia into a new era of prosperity. With her beauty, her family name, and her impeccable breeding, she represents everything a political wife should be. I couldn't have chosen better if I'd interviewed 100 candidates. The crowd laughed, taking it as a joke. But Sadie knew better. He had essentially described her as the winner of a competition she'd never entered. I look forward to our spring wedding, Richard continued, and to introducing her as the future First Lady of Georgia very soon after. More applause, more camera flashes. Sadie's smile felt frozen on her face. Would you like to say a few words, darling? Richard asked, the endearment hollow. She hadn't prepared anything, hadn't thought she'd be expected to speak. But suddenly, standing there with hundreds of eyes on her, with Richard's hands gripping hers too tightly, with her father watching expectantly from the side of the stage, Sadie felt something inside her crack. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. The Whitmore name has always represented tradition, loyalty, and duty, values I was raised to uphold above all else. The crowd nodded approvingly. These were the right words, the expected sentiments, but I've recently been reminded that there should be more to life, and especially to marriage, than duty. Her eyes drifted toward the distant stables, then back to the surprised faces watching her. There should be love, genuine love, the kind that sees you for who you really are, not just for what your name can do. A murmur ran through the crowd. Richard's grip on her hands tightened painfully. What are you doing? He whispered through clenched teeth. Sadie pulled her hands free. I'm speaking my truth for once. She turned back to the bewildered guests. I'm sorry, but I can't marry Richard Carlton. Not when my heart belongs elsewhere. Not when I'd be living a lie. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Benedict surged forward, his face dark with fury. But Sadie was already moving, stepping down from the stage, walking with as much dignity as she could muster through the parting crowd. Sadie! Richard's angry voice followed her. Get back here. You're making a scene. She kept walking, back straight, eyes forward, even as she heard her father's voice rising above the commotion. She's overwhelmed. Too much champagne, the engagement stands. Only when she reached the house did Sadie break into a run, racing up the stairs to her room. Her hands shook as she locked the door behind her, her breath coming in ragged gasps. What had she done? In one moment of clarity or madness, she had thrown away the Whitmore legacy, humiliated her father, and destroyed her carefully planned future. A pounding at her door made her jump. Sadie Elizabeth Whitmore. Her father's voice, tight with barely controlled rage. Open this door immediately. I need some time, Father, she called back, her voice trembling. You've embarrassed this family in front of everyone who matters in Georgia. Benedict snarled through the door. Open up, now. Sadie backed away from the door, her mind racing. There would be no reasoning with her father, no explaining her feelings. To him, she had committed the ultimate betrayal, putting personal happiness above family duty. A softer knock came from the connecting door to her balcony. Startled, Sadie turned to see Emma's worried face pressed against the glass. She quickly, let her sister in. Everyone's talking about what you did, Emma whispered, her eyes wide. Richard looked like he wanted to explode. I'm sure he did, Sadie said, sitting heavily on her bed. What have I done, Em? The right thing, Emma said with surprising conviction. You told the truth. The pounding on the hallway door grew louder. Sadie, this childish behavior stops now. Think of your sister, if not yourself. Emma flinched at the mention of herself as a tool for manipulation. Don't let him use me to control you, she said fiercely. I want you to be happy. Tears filled Sadie's eyes as she hugged her sister tightly. What about you? I can't leave you? Emma pulled back, her young face serious beyond her years. You're not Mom, you're not abandoning me, you're showing me how to be brave. A loud thud against the door suggested Benedict was now trying to force it open. You need to go, Emma said urgently. Before they break down the door, go to Noah. Sadie's heart raced. How did you— I'm 12, not stupid. Emma rolled her eyes. Go. I'll be fine. I'll visit you. We'll have secret meetings and it'll be like a spy movie. Despite everything, Sadie laughed through her tears. You're something else, Emma Whitmore. I know, her sister agreed. Now go. I'll distract them. With one last fierce hug, Sadie grabbed her purse and a sweater and slipped out onto the balcony. The old oak tree that had been her escape route as a teenager still stood strong, its branches within easy reach. As she climbed down, she heard Emma opening the bedroom door, heard her father's angry voice, heard Emma's indignant response. She's not here, and I don't blame her for leaving after the way you've treated her. Keeping to the shadows, Sadie made her way across the grounds, away from the now chaotic party, toward the warm glow of the stables, toward Noah, toward a future she'd never dared to imagine until now. Noah was brushing down Athena when he heard the stable doors open. Thinking it was one of the other hands coming to check on the horses, he didn't look up. The party still going strong up at the house? He asked, keeping his voice casual despite the ache in his chest. By now, Sadie would be officially, publicly claimed by Richard Carlton. The thought made him sick. Not exactly, a familiar voice replied. It's more of a scandal than a party at this point. Noah spun around, stunned to see Sadie standing in the stable doorway, still in her elegant blue gown, though her elaborate hairstyle was coming undone, tendrils framing her flushed face. Sadie, what happened? What are you doing here? She stepped further into the stable, the silk of her dress incongruous against the hay-strewn floor. I told them I couldn't marry Richard, in front of everyone. Noah stared at her, disbelief and a wild hope battling within him. You did what? I stood on that stage in front of half of Georgia's elite and said I couldn't marry a man I don't love. A slightly hysterical laugh escaped her. Father is furious, Richard is humiliated, and I've probably destroyed the Whitmore name for generations to come. Why? Noah asked, still struggling to process what she was telling him. Why would you do that? Sadie moved closer, her eyes never leaving his. Because of what you said, about deserving to be loved for who I am, not for my name. And because— She took a deep breath. Because I think I'm falling in love with you, Noah Grayson. Which is completely insane and probably doomed, but it's true. For a moment, Noah couldn't speak, couldn't move. Then, slowly, as if afraid she might vanish if he moved too quickly, he reached out and touched her cheek. Do you have any idea what you've given up? He asked softly. The life you could have had? A life in a gilded cage is still a cage, Sadie replied, leaning into his touch. I don't want to be a politician's accessory. I want to be myself, with someone who sees me, really sees me. Noah's heart pounded in his chest. And you think that's me? I know it is. She smiled, a real smile that lit up her eyes. You're the only one who ever has. Footsteps and voices outside the stable door broke the moment. Sadie tensed, recognizing her father's angry tone giving orders to the security team. They're looking for me, she whispered. Father won't let this go easily. Noah made a split-second decision. Come with me. Now. He took her hand, leading her, through the back of the stables to where his old truck was parked. The vehicle was far from impressive. Faded blue paint, a few rust spots, the bench seat patched with duct tape. But it ran well enough. Where are we going? Sadie asked as they climbed in. My grandmother's cabin, Noah replied, starting the engine. It's about an hour from here, deep in the woods. They won't think to look there, at least not right away. As they drove away from the Whitmore estate, the sounds of the search fading behind them, Sadie looked over her shoulder one last time. The grand house, the elaborate party, the life of privilege and constraint, all growing smaller in the distance. You sure about this? Noah asked, stealing a glance at her as they turned onto the main road. It's not too late to go back, to fix things with your father, with Richard. Sadie reached over and took his hand, lacing their fingers together on the worn seat between them. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, she said, and for the first time in years, she truly meant it. As the truck rumbled, down the country road, carrying them away from everything she'd ever known, Sadie felt something she'd almost forgotten, freedom. And with Noah's hand warm in hers, she felt something else too, hope. hope for a future built on love rather than obligation, a future she was finally brave enough to choose for herself. The cabin appeared through the trees as Noah's truck bumped along the narrow dirt road. It was smaller than Sadie had imagined, a simple wooden structure with a covered porch and a stone chimney. In the moonlight, it looked like something from a fairy tale, nestled among tall pines and surrounded by wildflowers. "It's not much," Noah said as he parked the truck, "especially compared to what you're used to." Sadie looked at the cabin, then back at him. "It's perfect." Inside was just as simple, a main room with a small kitchen area, a wood stove and furniture that had clearly been lovingly made by hand. Photographs lined the mantel over the stone fireplace, showing a smiling older woman with Noah's eyes. "Your grandmother?" Sadie asked, touching one of the frames gently. Noah nodded, lighting an oil lamp that cast a warm glow over the room. "Eleanor Grayson, toughest woman I ever knew, raised me after my mother left." "She looks kind," Sadie said, studying the photo. "She, sawahas, and stubborn as they come." Noah smiled at the memory. "She believed in living life on your own terms, no matter what anyone else thought." "I wish I could have met her," Sadie said softly. Noah moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth but not touching. "She would have liked you. She didn't have much patience for pretense or social rules." "Neither do I, apparently," Sadie replied with a shaky laugh, "given what I just did." The reality of her situation was beginning to sink in. She had publicly humiliated her father and one of the most powerful political families in Georgia. She had walked away from everything she'd ever known. And for what? For a farmhand she barely knew? For a feeling she couldn't even name? "Having second thoughts?" Noah asked, reading her expression with unsettling accuracy. Sadie shook her head. "Not about leaving, just wondering what happens now." "What happens now?" Noah said, moving to light the wood stove. "We get you out of that fancy dress and into something comfortable. My grandmother kept some clothes here. They might fit you." While Noah prepared a simple meal from the supplies he kept stocked, at the cabin, Sadie changed into a pair of soft jeans and a flannel shirt that smelled faintly of lavender. The clothes were plain but comfortable, nothing like the designer outfits that filled her closet at home. Home. Was the Whitmore estate still home? Or was she truly without one now? "You're thinking too hard," Noah said as she emerged from the bedroom. He handed her a mug of hot tea. "I can see it on your face." Sadie accepted the tea gratefully. "It's just hitting me, I guess. What I've done, what I've given up." "For what it's worth, I think you were incredibly brave," Noah said, leaning against the counter. "Standing up like that in front of everyone. Or incredibly foolish," Sadie replied with a wry smile. "Benedict Whitmore doesn't forgive easily, and Richard Carlton never forgets a slight." The reality of what she'd done carried weight beyond just hurt feelings. Richard had connections throughout Georgia. Benedict had the wealth and influence to make life very difficult for anyone who crossed him. "Are you worried about what they'll do?" Noah asked, setting plates of simple pasta on the small wooden table. Sadie sat down across from him, considering the question. "Not to me. Father wouldn't risk the scandal of publicly disowning his daughter. But to you, that's different." Noah's expression was calm, determined. "I can take care of myself, Sadie. I've got savings, skills, I'm not afraid of hard work. But the Whitmore estate is your home, your job, your father's legacy. Some things matter more," he said simply, his eyes meeting hers across the table. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the distant hooting of an owl outside. It was so different from the formal dinners Sadie was accustomed to, the endless small talk, the polite laughter, the constant awareness of being watched and judged. "Tell me about your mother," Noah said eventually. "If you don't mind talking about her." Sadie set down her fork, memories rushing back. Her name was Elizabeth. She was beautiful, blonde hair, blue eyes. Emma looks just like her. And did she really leave? Because she fell in love with someone else? Sadie sighed. That's the story Father tells, that she abandoned her family, her responsibilities for some inappropriate love affair. I was 13 when she left. old enough to miss her, but too young to understand why she went. Do you believe his version? Noah asked gently. I don't know, Sadie admitted. For years I was angry with her, felt betrayed, but lately I've wondered if there was more to it, if maybe she was suffocating just like I was. Noah reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Have you ever tried to find her? Sadie shook her head. Father forbade it, said she'd made her choice and was dead to us. She looked up at Noah. I don't even know if she's still alive. The weight of that admission hung in the air between them. All these years of not knowing, of questions unanswered. Maybe it's time you found out, Noah suggested, now that you're free to make your own choices. Free. Such a simple word for such a complex feeling. After dinner, they sat on the small porch, wrapped in blankets against the night chill. The stars were brighter here, away from the lights of the estate, countless pinpricks of silver against the black sky. What will you do tomorrow? Noah asked, his voice quiet in the darkness. Sadie leaned her head against his shoulder, taking comfort in his solid presence. I need to check on Emma somehow, let her know I'm okay. We can figure that out, Noah assured her. What about after that? After that? The future stretched before her, unmapped and uncertain for the first time in her life. No scheduled appearances, no society obligations, no predetermined path. I don't know, she admitted. I've never had to decide for myself before. It's terrifying. And, she searched for the word, exhilarating. Noah's arm slipped around her shoulders, drawing her closer. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. What about you? She asked, turning to look at him. What happens to your job at the estate? I imagine I'm fired, he said with a wry smile. Given that I've kidnapped the boss's daughter. You didn't kidnap me, Sadie protested. I came willingly. Try explaining that to Benedict Whitmore, Noah replied. But don't worry. I've been offered jobs at other farms, good ones. I'll land on my feet. Sadie studied his face in the moonlight, the strong line of his jaw, the kindness in his eyes, the quiet confidence that had drawn her to him from the start. This man was nothing like the polished, ambitious suitors her father had paraded before her over the years. Nothing like Richard Carlton with his calculated touches and political ambitions. Noah saw her, really saw her, not as an asset or a trophy, but as a person. A woman with thoughts and feelings and dreams of her own. Impulsively, she leaned forward and kissed him. A gentle kiss, tentative at first, then deepening as Noah's hand came up to cradle her face. When they broke apart, both breathless, Sadie felt as if something fundamental had shifted within her, a piece falling into place that she hadn't known was missing. Sadie, Noah said, his voice husky, I don't want you to feel rushed. It's all pressured. We have time. She smiled, touching his cheek. For once in my life, I'm doing exactly what I want. Not what's expected, not what's proper, just what feels right. They slept in separate rooms that night, Noah insisting on taking the small couch while Sadie used his grandmother's bedroom. But as Sadie lay beneath the handmade quilt, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the forest outside, she felt more at peace than she had in years. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they faced, she had made her choice, and for the first time it was truly hers. Morning brought reality crashing back in the form of Noah's ringing cell phone. He answered it in the kitchen, his voice low, but Sadie could hear the tension in his tone. Who was that? She asked, emerging. From the bedroom in her borrowed clothes, hair still tousled from sleep, Noah's expression was grim. Martha, your father has half the county out looking for you. There are reporters camped outside the gates of the estate, and Richard Carlton is threatening legal action. Sadie's stomach clenched. Legal action? For what? Breach of promise. Apparently, though Martha thinks it's just bluster. His pride is hurt more than anything. And Emma? Sadie asked anxiously. Is she all right? Noah's expression softened. She's fine, worried about you. Martha says she's been standing up to your father, refusing to tell him where you might have gone. Pride swelled in Sadie's chest. Brave little Emma already showing. More courage than Sadie had managed until yesterday. I need to let her know I'm okay, Sadie said. Can I use your phone? The call to Martha was brief but reassuring. The housekeeper promised to tell Emma that Sadie was safe, though she couldn't say much more with Benedict hovering nearby, listening to every word. "Your father is beside himself," Martha warned. "I've never seen him like this. You need to be careful, child." "I will," Sadie promised. "Take care of Emma for me." After hanging up, Sadie sat heavily at the kitchen table. "What do we do now?" Noah poured her a cup of coffee, his movements calm despite the turmoil surrounding them. "First we eat breakfast, then we make a plan." His practical approach was comforting. No drama, no panic, just steady, methodical problem-solving. Over a simple breakfast of eggs and toast, they talked through their options. Staying at the cabin wasn't viable long-term. It was too close to Whitmore property, and Benedict would eventually think to look there. They needed somewhere else, somewhere neither of them had connections. "I have some money saved," Noah said. "Not a fortune, but enough to get us started somewhere new." "I have my trust fund," Sadie offered. "It came from my mother's family. Father can't touch it." The thought of starting over somewhere new was both terrifying and thrilling. A clean slate, a life built on their own terms. "We could go west," Noah suggested. "California, maybe, or Oregon. I have a friend with a farm in Washington State who's always looking for experienced help. But what about Emma?" Sadie's heart twisted at the thought of leaving her sister behind. "I can't just abandon her." Noah reached across the table, taking her hand. "We won't. We'll figure something out, I promise. Maybe once things settle down." A sound outside cut him off, the crunch of tires on gravel. They both froze, eyes meeting in alarm. "Are you expecting anyone?" Sadie whispered. Noah shook his head, moving to the window to peer through the curtains. His expression shifted from concern to confusion. "It's a taxi," he said, "and there's a woman getting out. Older, blonde." Sadie joined him at the window, peering over his shoulder. The woman was in her 50s, her once golden hair now streaked with silver, but still elegantly, dressed in a simple blue suit. She paid the driver and turned toward the cabin, a determined set to her shoulders that looked achingly familiar. "It can't be," Sadie whispered, her heart pounding. "It's not possible." But as the woman came closer, there was no denying the truth. The same blue eyes that stared back at Sadie from her mirror every morning. The same graceful way of moving. "Mother?" Sadie breathed, hardly daring to believe it. Noah squeezed her hand. "Do you want me to talk to her first?" Sadie shook her head, drawing a deep breath. "No. This is something I need to do myself." With trembling legs, she walked to the door and stepped out onto the porch. The woman stopped at the foot of the steps, looking up at her with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "Sadie," Elizabeth Whitmore said, her voice exactly as Sadie remembered it. "You've grown so beautiful. 20 years of absence, of questions, of hurt and abandonment crashed over Sadie in a wave." "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" Elizabeth smiled sadly. "Martha called me. She's been keeping me updated on you and Emma for years, though your father doesn't know it. When she told me what happened at the engagement party, I knew I had to come." Sadie gripped the porch railing, steadying herself. 20 years of silence, and now you show up? Why should I even talk to you?" "Because I understand what you're going through better than anyone," Elizabeth replied. "Because I've been where you are, and because I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did." The simple honesty in her voice broke through Sadie's defenses. She stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. "You might as well come in." Inside, Noah made himself scarce, murmuring something about checking on the truck and slipping out the back door to give mother and daughter privacy. Elizabeth sat at the kitchen table, her eyes taking in the cabin with recognition. "I remember this place," she said softly. "Joseph Grayson built it for his wife. He was a good man." "Noah's grandfather?" Sadie supplied, sitting across from her mother. "You knew him?" Elizabeth nodded, her eyes distant with memory. "I knew them all. The Graysons have worked Whitmore land for generations." She focused on Sadie again. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because history is repeating itself, and I don't want you to suffer the way I did." "What do you mean?" Sadie asked, a chill running through her. Elizabeth took a deep breath. "Your father didn't tell you the whole truth about why I left. Yes, I fell in love with someone else, someone Benedict deemed inappropriate. But that's not why I had to go." "Then why?" Sadie demanded, years of hurt bubbling to the surface. Why? Leave your children? Why abandon us? Tears filled Elizabeth's eyes. Because Benedict gave me an impossible choice. Stay and never see the man I loved again, or go and never see my children again. He threatened to use his influence to destroy Michael's career, his reputation, everything, unless I walked away completely. Michael, Sadie repeated. That was his name. Elizabeth nodded, reaching into her purse to pull out a worn photograph. A younger version of herself stood smiling beside a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Michael Grayson, Noah's uncle. There you are. A revelation hit Sadie like a physical blow. Grayson? But that means... Yes, Elizabeth confirmed. Noah is the nephew of the man I loved, the man your father forced me to leave behind. Sadie stared at the photograph, pieces clicking into place. Does Noah know about this? I don't think so, Elizabeth replied. Michael died a few years after. I left. Cancer, Martha told me. I don't know how much of our story was shared with the family. The parallels were almost too much to comprehend. History repeating itself across generations, a Whitmore daughter falling for a Grayson man, defying Benedict, choosing love over duty. What happened to you after you left? Sadie asked. The question she'd wondered about for decades, finally spoken aloud. Elizabeth's eyes clouded with old pain. Michael and I had a few good years together. We moved to Colorado, started over. But after he got sick and it was hard. I wanted to come back, to see you and Caroline and baby Emma. But Benedict's lawyers made it clear, if I tried to contact any of you, there would be consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that would have destroyed any chance of you girls having normal lives, Elizabeth said simply. Your father is a powerful man, Sadie, and he believes in controlling what he considers his. The bitterness in her mother's voice resonated with Sadie's own experiences. How many times had Benedict referred to her as a possession, an asset, something to be managed, rather than a person with her own dreams? Why are you telling me this now? Sadie asked. Because you need to know what you're up against, Elizabeth replied, reaching across the table to take her daughter's hand. Benedict won't let you go easily. He'll use everything in his power, money, influence, even Emma, to bring you back under control. Emma, Sadie whispered, fear clutching at her heart. He wouldn't hurt her, would he? Not physically, Elizabeth assured her, but emotionally. He's capable of manipulating her, using her to get to you, just like he did with Caroline to try to hurt me. Sadie thought of her older sister, cold, distant Caroline, who had married Benedict's choice of husband and rarely visited or called. Had that been part of Benedict's revenge on their mother? What should I do? Sadie asked, feeling lost. Elizabeth's grip tightened on her hand. Fight. Fight smarter and harder than I did. Don't run away like I did. That gives him all the power. Stand your ground. How? He controls everything. The estate, the family money, Emma's future. A small smile curved Elizabeth's lips. Not everything. There's something he doesn't know. About something that would change the game entirely. Sadie leaned forward. What? My father, your grandfather, left a provision in his will. If Benedict ever prevented any of his descendants from accessing their rightful inheritance, or tried to control them through financial means, the trusteeship of the entire Whitmore estate would transfer to the eldest daughter. Caroline? Sadie asked, confused. Elizabeth shook her head. You. Caroline signed away her rights years ago as part of her marriage settlement. You're next in line. The implications were staggering. Are you saying I could control the estate? All of it? Legally, yes, the documentation is with my old lawyer in Atlanta. Benedict doesn't know it exists. My father never trusted him completely and kept certain fail-safes in place. Hope bloomed in Sadie's chest, followed quickly by doubt. But would it hold up in court, against father's lawyers? It would, Elizabeth said confidently, which is why we need to move quickly before Benedict realizes what we're doing. The back door opened and Noah stepped in, his expression guarded. Everything okay in here? Sadie looked from her mother to Noah, seeing the family resemblance she'd never noticed before. The same quiet strength, the same steadiness. Noah, she said carefully, I'd like you to meet my mother, Elizabeth Whitmore, and she has quite a story to tell you about your Uncle Michael. 2 days later, Sadie stood in the marble-floored lobby of Markham & Associates in downtown Atlanta. Dressed in clothes her mother had brought her, simple but elegant, a far cry from both the designer gowns Benedict preferred and the borrowed. "Jeans from the cabin. Are you ready for this?" Elizabeth asked, standing beside her. Sadie took a deep breath, thinking of Noah waiting in the car outside, thinking of Emma, who had managed to sneak away from her governess to call Sadie yesterday, promising to be brave until they could be together again. "I'm ready," she confirmed. Mr. Markham, a silver-haired attorney who had known her grandfather, welcomed them into his office with old-world courtesy. The documents were there as Elizabeth had promised, legal, binding, and powerful enough to shift the balance of control within the Whitmore dynasty. "Once these are filed with the court," Markham explained, "you'll have legal control of the estate and all its holdings. Mr. Whitmore will, of course, retain his personal assets, but the family trust, the properties, the business interests, those will all fall under your authority." "And Emma?" Sadie asked. "What about guardianship?" Markham's expression turned serious. "That's more complicated. She's a minor, and Benedict is her legal father. However, given your new position and the evidence of your mother's effective exile from the family, we have grounds to petition for at least shared guardianship." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. A way to protect Emma, to ensure she didn't grow up under the same suffocating control Sadie had experienced. As Sadie signed the documents, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. This wasn't about revenge or even about money. It was about breaking a cycle of control that had damaged 2 generations of Whitmore women already. "What happens now?" she asked as Markham collected the signed papers. "Now," the lawyer said with a small smile, "we deliver these to Benedict personally, together." The drive back to the Whitmore estate felt surreal. Sadie sat in the back of Markham's car with Elizabeth beside her, while Noah followed in his truck. They had agreed he should stay in the background for now. This confrontation needed to be between Sadie and her father. The security guard at the gate nearly fell off his chair when he recognized Elizabeth, but a curt word from Markham about legal business got them through without further delay. Benedict was in his study, just as Sadie had known he would be. When his secretary announced their arrival, his expression cycled rapidly from surprise to anger to cold, calculated control. "So," he said, rising from behind his desk, "the prodigal daughter returns, and with interesting company." His gaze slid over Elizabeth without warmth, then settled on Markham with growing suspicion. "This isn't a social call, Benedict," Elizabeth said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Clearly," he replied. "To what do I owe the pleasure of seeing my runaway wife and daughter in the same day? Come to ask for money, forgiveness." Sadie stepped forward, drawing strength from her mother's presence and from the knowledge that Noah was waiting just outside. "Neither. We've come to inform you of a change in management." Benedict's eyebrows rose. "Management? Of what, precisely?" Markham opened his briefcase, removing the legal documents. "Of the Whitmore family trust, Mr. Whitmore, and all associated holdings." For the first time, uncertainty flashed in Benedict's eyes. "What is this nonsense?" "Not nonsense," Sadie said, calmly. "Legal fact. My grandfather put safeguards in place to prevent exactly the kind of controlling behavior you've exhibited. Forcing Mother to leave, arranging my marriage for political gain, using Emma as leverage." Benedict's face darkened with anger. "You have no idea what you're talking about. This estate, this legacy, I built it, I protected it. At what cost?" Elizabeth challenged. "The happiness of your daughters, your wife?" Benedict's gaze was venomous. "You lost the right to call yourself my wife when you left this family for that farmhand. Michael Grayson was twice the man you'll ever be," Elizabeth replied, her voice steady. "And now your daughter has found her own path with his nephew. History has a sense of irony, doesn't it?" The mention of Noah seemed to push Benedict over the edge. "That stable boy, is that who you've thrown away your future for? Humiliated the Carlton family for?" "His name is Noah," Sadie said firmly. "And yes, I choose him, just as I choose to take control of what's rightfully mine." Markham cleared his throat. The papers have already been filed, Mr. Whitmore. Ms. Whitmore is now the legal trustee of all Whitmore Holdings. You'll retain your personal accounts and possessions, of course, but the estate, the businesses, the land, those decisions now rest with her. Benedict's face went pale, then flushed with rage. This is preposterous. Your lawyers will confirm what I've told you, Markham interrupted calmly. These documents are ironclad. Challenge them if you wish, but you'll only waste money and create a public spectacle. Is that really what you want? The threat of public scandal, always Benedict's greatest fear, seemed to deflate him slightly. He sank into his chair, looking suddenly older. What do you want? He asked, his voice tight with controlled fury. To humiliate me? To drive me out of my own home? Sadie shook her head. No, Father. I want to break the cycle. I want Emma to grow up free to make her own choices. I want this family to heal. And the Grayson boy, is he part of this healing? Benedict's voice dripped with sarcasm. Noah is part of my life, Sadie said simply, whether you approve or not. A knock at the study door interrupted them. Martha poked her head in, her eyes widening at the tableau before her. Elizabeth, Sadie, Markham, and a seething Benedict. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said carefully, but Miss Emma is asking for Miss Sadie rather insistently. Sadie looked to her father, a question in her eyes. After a long moment, he gave a curt nod. Go, he said. This discussion isn't over, but it can wait. In the hallway, Martha squeezed Sadie's arm. You're braver than I ever was, she whispered. Both of you. Her gaze included Elizabeth, who smiled softly at the housekeeper who had been her secret ally all these years. Emma was waiting in her room, pacing anxiously. When she saw Sadie in the doorway, she launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around her sister's waist. You came back, she cried. I knew you would. Sadie held her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of Emma's shampoo. Of course I did. I promised I wouldn't leave you, didn't I? Emma pulled back, her eyes wide with curiosity. Is Noah with you? Father has been so angry, he fired all the stable hands and hired new ones. Noah is outside, Sadie confirmed. And there's someone else you should meet. Someone who's been waiting a very long time to see you. Elizabeth stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face as she looked at her youngest daughter, the baby she'd been forced to leave behind. Emma, she said softly, do you know who I am? Emma stared, recognition dawning in her eyes. There were enough photos around the house, carefully selected by Benedict to show Elizabeth as the society wife, never as the free-spirited woman she'd truly been, for Emma to make the connection. Mom? She whispered, uncertain. Elizabeth nodded, not moving closer, giving Emma space to process. Yes, sweetheart, it's me. Emma looked to Sadie for confirmation, and when Sadie nodded encouragingly, she took a hesitant step toward their mother. You look like me, Emma said wonderingly. That's what everyone always says. You look like me, Elizabeth corrected gently. You came after. 1,000 questions hovered on Emma's lips. Sadie could see them forming, but the immediate one, the one that mattered most, came first. Are you staying this time? Elizabeth glanced at Sadie, uncertainty in her eyes. This was Sadie's call. Now her estate, her rules. Yes, Sadie answered for her. She's staying. We all are. But things are going to be different now. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Benedict retreated to the guest house on the property, nursing his wounded, pride and plotting his next move. Richard Carlton issued a press statement about mutual agreement to end the engagement, saving face while privately seething about the humiliation. But slowly, a new order began to emerge at the Whitmore estate. Sadie moved into the main house with Emma, while Elizabeth took a cottage on the grounds, close enough to rebuild her relationship with her daughters, but giving them the space they all needed after so many years apart. And Noah? Noah surprised them all by declining Sadie's offer to move into the main house. That's your world, he explained, as they walked through the orchards one evening, hand in hand. I respect it, but it's not mine. Never has been. Then where will you go? Sadie asked, fear clutching at her heart. After everything they'd been through, was he leaving her? Noah smiled, squeezing her hand. Not far. Your grandfather's old caretaker's house has been empty for years. It needs work, but you want to restore it? Sadie asked, relief flooding through her. If that's all right with the new boss. He teased. It's close enough to visit every day, but gives us both our own space. A chance to build something real, not just rush into living together because we're caught up in the drama. Wise, practical Noah, always thinking things through. It was part of why she loved him. His steadiness, his patience. I think that sounds perfect, she agreed, leaning up to kiss him. And what about your job? Now that father fired all the stable hands. Noah grinned. As it happens, the new owner of Whitmore Farms is looking for someone to manage the equestrian program, particularly the therapeutic riding initiative for children with special needs. Sadie blinked in surprise. Therapeutic riding? But we don't have... Not yet, Noah agreed. But it's something I've always wanted to develop. Horses helped me through some tough times after my father died. They could help others too. The idea was wonderful. Practical, compassionate, and forward-thinking, just like Noah himself. I think the owner would be very interested in that proposal, Sadie said, her heart full. In fact, I happen to know she's looking for ways to make Whitmore land benefit the community, not just the family bank account. Together they walked back toward the main house, where Emma was waiting on the porch with Elizabeth, the 3 generations of Whitmore women finally reunited. Do you think your father will ever accept us? Noah asked quietly as they approached. Sadie considered the question seriously. Benedict was proud, stubborn, and set in his ways. But he wasn't stupid, and deep down, underneath the control and manipulation, she believed he did love his family in his own flawed way. Eventually, she said, once he sees that I'm not destroying his legacy, just reshaping it into something better, something built on love and respect, not control and obligation. Noah squeezed her hand. And if he doesn't? Sadie looked up at him, at the man who had given her the courage to break free and find her own voice. The man who saw her as she truly was, not as an asset or an accessory. Then we'll still have each other, she said simply, and that's enough. As if on cue, Emma bounded down the porch steps toward them, Elizabeth following more sedately behind. Ah, you two being mushy again? Emma demanded, making a face. Because if you are, I'm going to need a warning system. Maybe a bell you can ring before you start kissing. Sadie laughed, pulling her sister into a hug. No bells. You'll just have to risk the trauma of seeing your sister happy. Emma pretended to gag, but her smile gave her away. Fine, but if you get married, I want to be maid of honor, and I want to ride Athena in the ceremony. Getting a bit ahead of... How yourself there, Squirt, Noah teased, ruffling her hair. But as his eyes met Sadie's over Emma's head, they shared a smile full of promise. They had time now. Time to heal, to build, to grow together without pressure or expectations. And for the first time in her life, Sadie Whitmore was exactly where she wanted to be. Not where duty or family legacy had placed her, but where her heart had led her. Home. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn day, Sadie stood in the doorway of the newly restored caretaker's house, watching as Noah hammered the last shingle into place on the roof. The small house gleamed with fresh paint and new windows, the garden beds ready for spring planting. So much had changed since that night she'd fled her engagement party in a borrowed dress. The therapeutic riding program was thriving, bringing children from all over the county to experience the healing power of horses. Emma was flourishing under the joint care of Sadie and Elizabeth, her respiratory issues improving with specialized treatment that Benedict had always dismissed as unnecessary. And Benedict himself, after an initial period of cold silence, he had gradually begun to thaw, especially after seeing the positive press coverage of the riding program. Pride was a powerful motivator, and being associated with charitable success appealed to his sense of legacy. He would never fully approve of Noah, of course. That bridge might take years to build if it ever could be, but he had stopped actively trying to undermine their relationship, which was progress enough for now. What do you think? Noah called down from the roof. Ready for move-in day tomorrow? Sadie smiled up at him, shielding her eyes against the sun. It's perfect, just like I imagined. He climbed down the ladder, wiping his hands on his jeans before pulling her into an embrace. Not too small after the mansion you're used to. Just right, she assured him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Big enough for us, small enough to feel like home? They weren't rushing things. Though Noah had finished the house, they had agreed to take their relationship one step at a time. Noah would live in the caretaker's house, while Sadie split her time between there and the main house with Emma. They were building a foundation first, strong, stable, and true. I found something yesterday, Sadie said, taking Noah's hand and leading him to the porch where a small box waited. While clearing out some of Father's old files, Noah sat beside her on the porch steps as she opened the box. Inside were photographs, letters, and a small notebook. These belong to your Uncle Michael, Sadie explained, handing him a faded photograph of a younger Michael Grayson standing proudly next to a newly built stable. And these... She passed him a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon. These were exchanged between him and my mother. Father had them all this time hidden away. Noah examined the items with gentle reverence. I barely remember Uncle Michael. He left when I was young. My father never talked about why. They were in love, Sadie said softly. Real love. The kind that defies expectations and breaks rules. The kind that repeats itself, Noah added, looking at her with such tenderness that her heart swelled. Sadie nodded. Mother says your uncle always believed they'd find their way back to each other someday. That they were meant to be together. And do you believe that, Noah asked? That some people are meant to be together no matter what? Sadie thought about the strange, winding path that had led her to this moment. The tears in the hayloft, the midnight conversations, the wild ride away from everything she'd ever known. How unlikely it all was, and yet how right it felt. I believe we make our own destiny, she said finally, but I also believe that sometimes, when we're brave enough to follow our hearts, we find exactly where we're supposed to be. Noah leaned forward, kissing her softly. And where are you supposed to be, Sadie Whitmore? She smiled against his lips. Right here, with you. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land that had been in her family for generations, Sadie felt a peace she'd never known before. This was her legacy now. Not the Whitmore name or the family fortune, but the love she'd been brave enough to choose. A car approached up the long driveway, and they turned to see Emma bouncing in the passenger seat as Elizabeth drove them toward I. The caretaker's house. Ready for dinner? Sadie asked, standing and pulling Noah up with her. He wrapped an arm around her waist, looking out at the land that had brought them together, land that had once represented obligation and tradition, but now symbolized possibility and hope. Ready for everything, he replied. And as Emma ran toward them, as Elizabeth waved from the car as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Sadie knew that this imperfect, unexpected, hard-won happiness was worth running for. Worth fighting for, worth building a life around, and so they would down the end.